G'day guys, today I want to talk to you about a concept that you can apply to all kinds of things in life, but particularly Warhammer 40k, and that is weaponized optimism. So I'm going to break down this sort of piece of player development advice in detail and explain how you can apply this strategy to Warhammer 40k. Let's get into it.
Look for the blood god.
Today's video is brought to you by Proxy Wars. Head over to their website if you want to show some support to those who support this channel. Alright, so let's talk about weaponized optimism in Warhammer 40k. So essentially, this is a mechanism or a strategy that you can employ to increase your tournament results and increase your satisfaction in the game by essentially weaponizing optimism. So we've all played those games where you deploy, your opponent deploys, they go first, and they do devastating damage to you turn 1. And you're like, I've lost. It's game over. Like, I can't recover from that. He just killed Angron and my unit of Berserkers before my first turn, and I really needed those two pieces to be able to deal with this thing effectively, so now I'm in trouble, right? There's no way I can win the game from here. And what the philosophy of weaponized optimism suggests is that if you accept, it's game over, I've lost, your mind is going to shut down the part of it which searches for opportunities to generate results. So instead of looking at the game state and thinking, well, what can I do to get some victory points here? What can I do to try to deal with that enemy unit over there? You're going to be looking at it going, I'm lost, I'm shut down. I'm just like, okay, whatever. I guess I just move over here and you just win, and who cares? I can't do anything to win the game, so I'm just going to do this thing, right? Whereas if instead you approach it from a very optimistic position, you're going to look at the game state and you're going to be like, okay, that was a powerful blow. However, you never know when things are going to swing back in my favor. So I'm going to keep looking at this game, trying to find ways to secure extra victory points, to make sure that I'm putting myself in advantageous positions, to make sure I'm going for it hard. You're going to then think about opportunities that you may have otherwise not seen because you're keeping an optimistic lens. So I'm going to give you a practical example of this, something that happened to me very recently at a tournament. I played against an AdMech army, and I was running World Leaders, and his army, it was a perfect counter to my army. So one of the things that World Leaders really struggle with is multiple small units, and that's what he had. He had so many units that were like a 50 to 65 point unit that in order for me to kill, I would need to use one of my 150 point units of 8-bound to kill that one unit. And this gave him a considerable advantage because it meant that I was going to run out of units way faster than him because he was going to be able to force me into these poor trades. So an example could be he goes first and he throws a 65 point unit of these little dogs out onto an objective, right? And it's like, cool, if I leave him there, he's going to control that objective. The rest of his army is so far back, I can't deal with it. So I'm going to have to send out a unit of Exalted 8-bound onto that objective to kill him off of it. But then he can send out a unit of his to kill me off. And now we're trading 1 for 1, unit for unit. But he has 3 to 4 times as many units as I do. So I was like, okay, that's a big problem. The other thing that his army had was these 3 big units of sterilizers or whatever they are. The guys with the flamethrowers and the wings. And that's a unit of 10 flamethrowers. And I was like, wow, the overwatch on that is brutal. So if he sits one of those on an objective, it's going to be very, very hard for me to get my berserkers onto the objective, to get 8-bound onto the objective, because he's just going to be able to overwatch and auto-hit with a billion flamethrowers. So I was like, this is such a ridiculously hard matchup. Like, not to mention, he has so many units that he's able to just pick the secondaries. He picks fixed secondaries and just goes behind enemy lines and deploy teleport homers. And because I have so few units, I'm going to basically have to abandon my backfield in order to go into his deployment zone to deal with him. Which means he just takes one of these 65 point units and deep strikes it in my backfield. And I'm not going to turn a 200 point unit of Khorne Berserkers around to go back and kill that thing to prevent him from scoring those secondaries. Because then I've got a 200 point unit of Berserkers that's moved towards the middle and then had to spend a turn or two moving back into my home, because that just concedes the whole board to him. He then has units everywhere. So I was like, this is just a ridiculous matchup. Absolutely ridiculous. There's no way that I'm going to win. He also has these infantry units that reduce the objective control of my units by 1. So all he has to do is just walk near me, and he just takes the objectives from me. Like, my ability to interact with the primary is very low, and my ability to interact with his secondaries is very low, and his ability to kill me is very high, and his ability to inconvenience me with small units is very high. So it would have been very easy for me to look at that game from a very negative viewpoint. And to be honest, at the start I did. I deployed my army and I was just like, look, this is going to be real hard. But what I did is I basically looked at it from a team perspective, and I was like, well, let's just see how many points can I get out of this matchup. Because in team games, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it's just how many points can you bring back, because it's the collective points for all the players on your team versus the points of the players on their team. So I was like, okay, let's see, how many points can I get out of this game? How many points can I get? And even though this was a singles tournament, and it would only matter if I win, I just viewed it through this optimistic lens of, I'm just going to try and get as many points as I can. So I deployed real conservatively so that he couldn't do the damage he needed to do to me turn 1, and then I basically moved up and did these trades. And because I was looking through it optimistically, trying to find points, I found opportunities to do things that were really, really relevant. So one of them was he had a unit of the flamethrower guys nearby a unit of just infantry with regular guns. So what I did is I moved up so that I was further than 12 inches from the flamethrower guys, so he couldn't overwatch me. I charged the other unit, knowing that if I rolled a big enough charge, I would be able to swing my Master of Executions in that Berserker squad around, and then he would be able to then pile into and fight the unit with the flamethrowers, and the rest of the unit would fight that infantry unit that was the target of the charge. I was like, that will work. I'm going to need to roll like a 7 or an 8 for the charge, because in order to get the distance to get to that unit that I was 12 inches away from. And then I rolled like a 9 for the charge, so I was able to do that, swing him around. And then I was like, he's going to need to roll hot because it's just the Master of Executions hitting that flamethrower unit. The other unit's toast because it's a billion Berserker attacks, but he's going to need to roll really hot for this strategy to even be worth it. Even though it was a hard strategy to pull off, it's still relatively ineffective unless I roll really, really lucky. So I chose the sustained hits from my Blessings roll that turn, and went in with the Master of Executions. It's got 6 attacks. I rolled all the 6 dice, and of the 6, I rolled 5 6s and a single 5. So everything hit, and 5 of them exploded into an additional hit. So I ended up getting 11 hits, which was just ridiculously lucky, right? And then that guy went in and did massive damage to that flamethrower unit. I was like, okay, now I've effectively wiped out that unit for free because, it was outside of 12 inches. It was unlikely that I was going to get to touch it. And even if I did touch it, it was unlikely I was going to do much damage to it. But I just happened to get lucky and do this massive amount of damage. And that was thanks to the fact that I was approaching the game with high levels of optimism. If I went into it and I was like, look, I can't win because he's just gonna overwatch me, and he's just gonna take my OC away anyway, and then take the objective. So I'm not gonna score primary all game, and then he's gonna score all of his secondaries. I'm gonna lose. So if I'd have just went in with that super negative attitude, I probably wouldn't have seen that situation and gone, well, here's an opportunity where if things go my way and I get lucky, then this is going to work really well. So I wouldn't have seen that opportunity. So then I've gone in, I've done that, and that was a huge, huge win for me. Then he's had to send another unit over there to deal with the Khorne Berserkers. He's done that, but in doing so, because he's now on the back foot and he's going, oh crap, I need to recover, he's sent this flamethrower unit over there. He's killed, the Berserkers, killed the 8-bound that were nearby, whatever, but he's positioned them very close to a wall, which meant I was able to rapid ingress my Exalted 8-bound on the other side of that wall. He can't overwatch me. And then I'm going to be able to move up right next to the wall, charge him through the wall, and dodge the overwatch there as well. Which meant I was able to deal with a second unit of those flamethrower guys. So this was a massive problem for him. And it was facilitated by this weaponized optimism. Another one was I basically had a unit of Khorne Berserkers jump out and kill something off an objective. And I was like just sitting on the objective, and my plan was that he was going to turn around, he was going to shoot me, he was going to kill all my stuff, but then I was going to spend a command point to stick that objective, which is the World Leader stratagem, to make it so that when a unit dies on an objective, that objective remains under my control, even though the unit is gone. So that was the plan, and I basically put the unit on there. Then he disembarked a whole bunch of stuff to do all his damage, and he disembarked it very close to me. And then at the end of his movement phase, he's gone, oh no, Blood Surge moves. So he's asked, can he move them differently? And I was like, yeah man, go nuts. So he basically moved them all back 6 inches and then 6 inches again in the other direction, so that they were as far away from my Khorne Berserkers as possible. So these guys were they were probably like 9 inches away from the Khorne Berserkers at this point, because he wanted to be nearby his transports and stuff. And he's gone, yep, cool. And then he had I think he has a rule where if he shoots me with the transport, the guys that disembark also get to do reroll wounds or something. So he shot me with the transport first, killed 1 or 2 Berserkers, which should have killed 3 or 4, but I got really lucky with my rolls. And then when I rolled my Blood Surge move, I rolled a 6. So those Berserkers have just gone zip 6 inches right next to him. And now he's realized, if he shoots me again, I'm going to get into combat with him. And then he's going to be in a lot of trouble, because he hadn't budgeted for me rolling a 6 on my Blood Surge move, which was really, really lucky. So he's gone, okay, he's looked at the next unit, he's like, on average dice, this unit should wipe that whole unit of Khorne Berserkers out, because it had already been softened up by the transport. So he's like, yep, I'm going to have to do it, because I can't just not shoot the Berserkers, and I can't charge them, because they have Master Executions, they're going to fight first. So I have to kill him and shoot him. So he's shot at him. I got really lucky on my saves, really lucky on my Feel No Pains, and as a result, he only killed another 2 or 3. So I still had 3 or 4 Berserkers left, and the Master of Executions, which I then rolled another 6 on the Blood Surge move, which meant I was able to get into combat with the units that hadn't shot yet, which was absolutely disastrous for him, because it meant that they now don't get to shoot, and they're going to die because they're in combat with Khorne Berserkers. So this was another situation where, if I had have just gone, I'm going to lose anyway, and just thrown the Berserkers on the objective willy-nilly, it wouldn't have worked. But because I knew that I'm going to find those points, I'm going to do these tricks, whatever I need to do to get these points, I knew that I had placed them on the objective, but as close to him as possible, so that when he shot me, I could Blood Surge move into him. And I knew it was very unlikely that I was going to get those big Blood Surge moves. In fact, most likely outcome was that he was just going to wipe me out where I am on the objective. But because I'd built that plan in, being optimistic about, well, hang on, all it takes is a little bit of good luck and I'm in, right? That can swing the game. And the funny thing is at this stage, after the first thing where I got really lucky with that Master of Executions, killed a whole bunch of stuff, then this situation where I got really lucky with those Blood Surge moves, you could see an attitude shift in my opponent, where he recognized that now he was going to lose the game. because all of the units that he needed to be able to take me off of primary were dead, which meant I was going to now control the primary. He was still going to have way more secondary points than me, but he no longer had any units that could contest those berserkers. He had no units that were able to deal with Angron anymore, you know? And Angron's just running around just nuking everything he touches. So he was like, this is a problem. Meanwhile, I was drawing decent cards all game long, because one of the things is if you are optimistic, all right, and you go, well, there's every chance I'm still going to have some units left, so I'm going to make sure that I'm pressing up into my opponent's backfield, so that if I do draw behind enemy lines, if I do draw teleport homers, if I do draw, you know, capture enemy outpost, I'm heading in the direction of that objective. So I went in with Optimism, headed for that objective, drew those cards, got lucky, and got some really big turns of victory points, which meant that even though he had a massive advantage in that he was going to maximize his secondaries, and I knew that from the start, well, being optimistic allowed me to almost maximize mine as well. And because I had a stranglehold on those central objectives, thanks to the fact that I got quite lucky with a few units, now I was in a position where he was likely to lose. And he recognized that, and then I could see him start to just throw the game. He started to just go, cool, well, I guess this happens, and he's just moving things around, like he's not dedicating his shooting, he's not putting effort into allocating, because he's looked at it and he's seen like the writing on the wall, so to speak, where he's gone, well, it's kind of game over for me now. And as a result, he started making sloppy decisions, he started, you know, missing opportunities, and meanwhile, my optimism has been rewarded, so I'm emboldened, and I'm now going, well, I actually have an opportunity to turn this into an actual win. This game that, by all rights, should have been a loss, I'm going to turn this into an actual win. And that emboldened me to keep finding more ways of doing these various things. So, like, one of them was, there was a turn where I had an opportunity to kill both of his transports. He had 2 transports with Angron. But I was like, well, hang on. No, I'm not going to do that this turn, because I took tactical objectives, and I haven't drawn Bring It Down yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use Angron this turn to go and kill this other thing, just in case I draw the Bring It Down card in the next turn. And then, it wasn't the next turn, but the turn after, I drew the Bring It Down card, and I'm like, yep, perfect. Meanwhile, he, because he'd more or less felt like he'd lost the game, had his 2 transports parked right next to each other. Which then meant, on the turn that I did draw Bring It Down, I was able to send Angron in and charge both transports with Angron and blow both of them up, which meant I got a big score for Bring It Down. And that was because I was being optimistic and going, well, if I get lucky and I draw this card and I still have Angron around and he still has transports around, I'm going to be able to do this move and get victory points, and that's going to matter because the game is close and I might win. Whereas because he was viewing the game like, oh, I'm going to lose anyway, he didn't think, well, I should probably separate my transports just so that if Dean gets Bring It Down, he's only going to be able to kill one of them because Angron's base isn't big enough to hit both of them where they are. So if he was looking at it through an optimistic lens, he would go, well, I need to limit Dean's points, so I'm going to make sure I separate these guys. But he wasn't thinking like that because he had just sort of resigned to having lost the game. So he was just like, oh, well, fuck it, whatever, I guess these transports go over there. And that ended up with me winning the game by like 2 points, 3 points. A very, very tight game. But my optimism in that game and in that matchup, my way of approaching it going, I'm just going to get as many points as I can. I'm going to look for winning opportunities where I can get them. I'm not going to just concede that I'm losing the game, even though on paper it should have been more or less unwinnable. I went in with optimism, and that actually translated to a win. And I attribute a lot of that to luck, of course. There was a lot of opportunities there. We're rolling 6s for Blood Surge moves. It's very unlikely to happen, but it did happen. You know, getting the cards that I needed at the right time, being able to draw Capture Enemy Outpost the same turn that Angron is like 5 inches away from his home objective, and the only thing on his home objective is a unit of 5 infantry, right? That was really lucky. I was able to then send Angron in and do this thing. There was a lot of luck. You know, rolling 5 out of 6 6s to hit when I have sustained hits active, you know, that's luck as well. But it's not entirely luck, because I chose the sustained hits when I picked my blessings roll knowing that I needed to get lucky and I needed to spike. So when I sent him in and I did get lucky and roll those sixes, it actually worked. And that was thanks to the optimism of me selecting a blessing on the off chance that I get lucky, you know? Whereas if I hadn't have picked sustained hits, if I'd have just picked advance and charge and 6-up Thermo Pain like I normally do, and then I send the Master of Executions in, and then I roll all those sixes, I'd be like kicking myself because I'd be like, wow, if I'd have, you know, backed myself and gambled here, you know, I could have turned that into something really, really powerful. Same goes for, you know, if I had have, you know, not invested in the cards and gone, cool, I'm just going to send Angron to go kill these big threats, these big bombs. And then I draw Capture Enemy Outpost, and I'm like, well, Angron's nowhere near their home objective. He's got, you know, he's all the way over here on one of the objectives on the no man's land. That would have been tragic. But going, okay, well, I'm going to plan for, you know, turns 3, 4, or 5, I'm likely to draw Capture Enemy Outpost. So I'm going to send Angron towards his home objective so that if I do get lucky and draw that card, I'm going to be able to score it, and that's 8 victory points that go straight in towards my secondaries. You know, planning for that so that then when you get lucky, it's in your favor and it actually matters. That's one of the things that weaponized optimism gives you. You know, the ability to plan for the unlucky and benefit from it when it does happen. Same goes with those 6-inch Blood Surge moves. If I had just gone, cool, I guess I'll just chuck a Rhino on that objective and advance my Berserkers in, and then the Berserkers just get overwatched and die, and I go, oh, well, what was I going to do? There's, you know, they were going to die anyway. You know, that isn't conductive of, you know, capitalizing on luck. Whereas if I went, okay, I'm going to move on to this, I'm going to send something else in to deal with that Overwatch threat, and now he's going to have to shoot me with granular damage, which means I'm going to get the Blood Surge move, and if he low rolls his damage or I high roll my saves, I'm going to get multiple Blood Surge moves. And if those Blood Surge moves are high, like 5s and 6s, I'm going to be able to tag a bunch of his stuff. So I basically said, cool, there's like 3 or 4 things that need to go my way, but they might, you know, they're just as likely to go my way as they are to go his way, so who knows? So I sent this unit out with that optimistic outlook, and that was what caused the win. If I hadn't been optimistic and I had been closed-minded, I would have lost that game. Instead, I won that game. And there's dozens and dozens of examples I could give of this, but the core takeaway is never look at a game and be like, I've just lost. Whether that be that you're in a matchup that's really hard, you know, it might be you're versing something that has you're running nothing but, you know, Chosen in Rhinos, and your opponent has multiple Forge Fiends or something, right? So it's like, wow, they have 3 damage stuff that's going to rip straight through my armor saves, straight through my 3 wound models, and they're just going to kill all my stuff, right? So whether it's like a matchup where you're at a disadvantage, whether it be a situation where you just get unlucky on that first turn and he goes in and does something really, really powerful and really, really, you know, detrimental to your game plan, that can also make you feel like that. Or whether it's just you get paired into a really known, competent, you know, results-oriented player. Where you're like, wow, this guy wins every one of the local tournaments and now I'm paired into him, so I'm probably going to lose. If you go to any one of those situations and close your mind to the opportunity of getting a win, it's going to result in you losing. Whereas if you go into that situation optimistically, right? So you look at it and you're like, this is a really rough matchup, but who knows? Maybe his Forge Fiends will roll nothing but 1s and they'll just explode themselves, you know? There's been plenty of games that I've seen where somebody will take their Forge Fiend, they'll use the hazardous profile, and then when they roll the hazardous, they'll roll 3 1s. And then all of a sudden that Forge Fiend just takes 9 wounds to itself, right? And then sometimes in the same turn or the next turn, they'll either roll another hazardous test, or they'll fail their Dark Pact and do D3 more wounds to themselves, and then they'll roll a 5 or a 6, so take an additional 3 wounds, and they'll just die. Like, these things happen, right? So if you approach the game optimistically, it might not always happen, but there will definitely be some games where you would have lost had you been pessimistic and closed-minded, that you do win because you're optimistic. Same goes when you're playing against a really good player. You know, you go up into the regular guy who wins all the local tournaments. If you think, oh, he's the guy who's really, really good, therefore he's going to win, he's going to, you know, blah, 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 Well, of course, that's going to close your mind to opportunities to find wins, and you're going to end up losing. Whereas if you look at it as an exciting opportunity, where you might actually get to beat this player, this guy who everybody thinks is amazing and everyone knows has all these results, is very, very competent. If you go in and go, cool, I'm going to go in and do all this stuff, I'm going to look for opportunities to get points, and then you get lucky, he gets unlucky, he underestimates you, you don't overestimate him, right? And then you win. Well, that's thanks to optimism. Optimism is what did that. And I think people underestimate the psychological component of Warhammer 40k. They look at 40k as it's like the winner is the guy who has the best list, or the winner is the guy who rolls the best dice, or the winner is the guy who has the best strategy. It's like, yes, it can be those things, and they obviously play a very heavy component in whether or not you win games or not. But there's a fourth element to that, which is the winner is the person with the most optimistic outlook. And it's not always that, but it's definitely a component that goes towards those winning results. And you'll often find that top tier players that win lots of tournaments are very optimistic people. And it's easy to look at that and go, yeah, they're only optimistic because they always win. I think that's backwards. I think it's that they always win because they are optimistic. And I think it's really important to remember that, because that's one of the things that's going to generate results for you if you can replicate that attitude towards the game. So I hope this was interesting to you guys. I hope you learned from this, and I hope this is something that you can put into practice in your games to improve your tournament results. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to head over to blogforthebloodgod.com and show your support there. You can pick up t-shirts like this one. We've got neoprene gaming mats, objective markers, we've got terrain kits, we've got dice, we've got all kinds of merchandise over on that website. And every time you buy one, it's worth a couple of bucks to me, which allows me to continue to improve the quality and the frequency of this content, which is something that I want to do for you guys. Or if you'd like to, you can join our Patreon community, where we have a Discord, a unique Discord where we do one-on-one coaching, strategy, list advice, that sort of stuff. And we also just have a ton of fun talking about 40k in there. We do, in some of the higher tiers, we do regular phone calls where we'll talk about an upcoming tournament that you're going to. We'll talk about certain matchups that you might be struggling with. All that sort of stuff is available over on Patreon. So make sure you check that out. And I look forward to continuing the conversation in the comments section below. Let me know what you guys think about optimism in Warhammer 40k. Do you think it's overrated? Do you think it's undersold? What do you guys think? And in the spirit of optimism, let's keep the positive comments going in the comments section below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll talk to you in the next one. Cheers.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.